some campaigns have found plenty of bricks to cement themselves high on the grid, and for others, things are a little bit shaky. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you're watching this, wherever you may be watching this. My name is Nick Amon, and I want to welcome you back to the OOR booth, and of course, round 6 of the Simrigs Sprint Series, this time from Indianapolis. The Brickyard not playing host to the 500, but it might as well be our own little bit of a 500. Drivers have had some time to get acquainted with this circuit, and we'll see who has done just enough prep work to get themselves ready for tonight's festivities. Of course, Loverink leading this championship by a pretty considerable margin here. Only 13 drivers tonight, so we'll see if Clifford can give him a run for his money. He's been doing that quite a lot these past few weeks. Surprisingly, we haven't had the sort of Loverink walkaway that we've seen in seasons past. Hasn't set a time here in free practice yet, but will soon enough. Indianapolis is a circuit that really, it's hard to find people who genuinely enjoy running this, at least from my experience. It's a good circuit on its own, but you don't see a lot of pub lobbies running it, and I'm fairly certain LFM hasn't done it recently, unless they have. But for Loverink, it could be another win on the pole here tonight, or it could be someone else, as we see Clifford going faster. 35-18, Hendrickson, teammate for Loverink from Jean Alesi Esports. He had his debut last week at the Red Bull Ring. It was certainly an interesting time, to say the least, so he's going to look to do better this time around. Kia right now third in free practice. He's been making a little bit of noise later on in the season. Portis as well. Speaking of noise, that Honda lighting up the charts, really showing why those nerfs were a bad idea, because he has been giving some of these more front runners a hard time compared to seasons in the past with the same set of wheels under his car. Austin Carpenter right now 5th in the Aston Martin, doing a great job. And Larry Lanham joining us here. I just saw him pop onto the server. We've got Lucas Lemaire, one of the newer drivers in North America. He has been doing exceptionally well for a first-timer here. In the newer Ferrari, Jaden Hernandez as well, another soon-to-be familiar face here in North America, in 8th position right now. That BMW doing great work. Craig Pocket rocking it with the homebrew livery. I love this livery. Compared to the one he had before, I prefer this. This looks very, very nice, but he does go faster. Dan Fernandez just right now in the top 10. I'm probably setting a time, so we'll see how high he goes. Goes 7th. He's been doing some very good stuff here in North America. Brian Rasco, familiar face. On to Nick Stapleton. It's been rough for the 35 in the Ferrari, hoping that this time around Indianapolis is a bit nicer than it's Scott Waters. And of course, Larry Lanham to round out the 14 cars tonight. And Indianapolis not too nice on the tires. But, of course, folks, if you know me, if you know North American Sprint, well, it's time for highlights from last week's race. In case you missed it, don't worry, I've got you covered. We are at the Red Bull Ring, a new addition to North American Sprint, or just Sprint in general. First time we've run it here in the series since its release. It was 2 30-minute races. So that Super Sprint, I know we had just had one at the famous Laguna Seca, but we thought, hey, why not do it here? And it was a darker qualifying taking place, I believe in-game time was somewhere around midnight. And if you saw it there in that previous shot, it was a little bit dark, or a little bit wet rather. You can see it on the edges of the circuit, so it shook up qualifying a little bit. Drivers were a little bit cautious on those first few out laps, trying to figure out what the line was. You can really see it with all the spray being kicked up. These drivers rounding the corners here. Surprisingly, despite the trickier conditions, per se, qualifying wasn't really that crazy. It was rather relaxed. So this first qualifier would, of course, set us up for the first race of the evening, 30 and 30. It was a mandatory pit stop for both. It was just fuel, though. So a 25-second mandatory stop time was added on, because obviously if you just tell people to get fuel and get out of there, everyone's putting one click on the fuel and sitting in pit for all of about 3 seconds at the most, and then being back out on circuit. But those big names, of course, were showing back up. Clifford was one of them. He has been, as I said earlier, really been giving a lot of pressure to Lovering. But into race number 1, an early morning start for these guys. Lovering taking pole position with Portis, a surprising P2. Not to say that he isn't generally in the top 5, but he was really showing his stripes here at the Red Bull Ring. On this outlap, though, track's still a little bit damp, so drivers trying to clear as much water as they can, as best they can, and of course getting some heat into the tires. Things are going to be tricky for those opening laps. Craig Pocket sort of in this lower backfield. But it was a, of course, rather uneventful parade lap, as is tradition with these openers. But soon enough, drivers would be lining up side by side all the way down on board here with Clifford. Not the first time he's been this close to Lovering, but rarely do we see Portis also being in the immediate vicinity. So a lot of work there for the 999. But of course, Lovering with the toughest job of them all. He had the outside line for turn number 1. But as we cross that start-finish line, things would go green for that first race, and it would be Lovering leading the charge into turn number 1. Right behind him, of course, it's Portis, Clifford, and Keogh. You see Wilson running wide there in the bright yellow McLaren. It would be a great view, though, for Keogh as he got to watch Portis and Clifford start to duel it out a little bit into that first big braking zone. A little bit of a touch there, unsettling the back end of the Lamborghini. Thankfully, not getting spun out. Keogh would take advantage of that and almost use sort of a Forza braking line in the form of Portis to gain that position. Hendrickson and Sanchez were dueling it out for position number 4. It looked like Sanchez might have had a lead going into the corner, but a better exit there for the Lamborghini of Hendrickson would allow him to just skirt ahead of the Mexican driver, and not too long later, of course, back in the field, Bandera would overtake Stapleton and start eyeing up the BMW ahead. Now, things very quickly went south for Stapleton. So after that move was done, Stapleton coming around left, then the right. That back end just steps out a little bit, gets into the gravel, back onto the circuit, and picks up Waters. You can see that Migliori, he also got wrapped up in that a little bit, but thankfully nothing really came of it. This is the onboard from Waters. Nothing you could have done there. Right into the front left. Both of those drivers effectively down and out for that first race. And Migliori, little touch, he was fine. He kept carrying on, but that would have been the first lap of the race underway. And plenty more action to come out the backside of Pocket here through turn number 1. Doesn't get it quite right. Rasco, with the momentum, is able to throw it around the outside. These two would go side by side. And it would be a slight lead for Rasco, which he would just get fully away from Pocket. But the top 8 started to pull away. We usually see a smaller group, usually maybe 3 up to 4, maybe 5, starting to form their own little pack, but it was actually that top 8 that were doing their own thing while everyone else was fighting. And Hernandez would start to eye up Pocket as well, taking one out of Rasco's playbook. He would have the inside line into this first corner, would overshoot it a bit. Pocket trying to get a straighter exit, he does, but the momentum coming just a little bit too late. He would pull pretty much about halfway alongside the BMW. He would look again down the inside later on the brakes, well and truly sending it into the corner. And Hernandez sticking behind him. So the first move didn't work as solidly as possible, but he would get back. Lemaire would join in on the fight, because he sensed some opportunities. Hernandez would get back in Pocket, and Lemaire would go through as well. Bandera also making an appearance here, but he would Also, Dispatch Pocket side by side, almost making contact for those two. But it was Hernandez getting a lot out of it. Now Hendrickson would start to give Portis a little bit of trouble, as he would get a move done. But Portis seeking any sort of real estate he can. The inside line covered off from Hendrickson, but a slight touch on the backside would spin him around. Sanchez and Wilson would just do a little bit of evasive maneuvering to get through. From Portis' perspective, though, I mean, this was so close. This was razor margins. Just a little touch, and that's all it was. Around Hendrickson would go. He would have to do a lot of recovery from then on. But looking later into the race, Wilson and Sanchez now deciding that with Hendrickson out of the way and with Portis starting to pull away a little bit, they might as well have some fun here. The two McLarens side by side heading under the banner. Now Wilson is on the inside, but he is a little ways back. He would just fully send it into the corner somehow. Not making contact, but that wouldn't be the end of it, as these two continue to argue over this spot. Wilson now on the outside would turn in as much as he can, and there would just be a little bit of contact. Sanchez gets flicked around a little bit, would drift across the grass. Thankfully, a minor touch on the wall there. He would emerge the other side perfectly fine, but of course, a bit of a shattered ego. Now, with those mandatory stops, look at this. This is Loverik and Clifford coming in at the exact same time. Portis as well. Now, normally, when you come in first before somebody, you tend to have a much better time of getting in and out of the pits, but you can see Loverik driving down the pit lane, Clifford off the jacks, and just barely ahead of Loverik. So he would take the lead for race number 1. And it became a question of, could he hold off a charging Audi? That is a very difficult question. But as the sun rises over the Austrian hills, it would be drivers rising up the field. As we take a look at Bandera and Lemaire, these two guys, some drag racing here on what you could probably call a mid-track straight, I guess. But the inside line for Bandera was his main mode of attack. It actually wouldn't work. Lemaire using the momentum, swinging around the outside. So Bandera had a finger on the position, but it was Lemaire to come in, grab him by the shoulder, and throw him back behind. But things would start to continue a little bit more. It's a solid exit. Bandera trying to get some revenge here, throwing it way around the outside. Just enough space between the two of them. Not just once, but twice as they head through this little S, and Bandera would pop out the other side. So temporarily loses a position, but does gain it back not too long after. And moving forward, Keogh would start to have some problems here. Going into the final corner, he would just get a little bit of a wiggle coming off of the curb there, and then again, another wiggle to slow himself down. Wilson does not need to ask twice, as he would overtake the Aston Martin, and into turn number 1, that move would be settled. So Keogh having to play catch up. Portis right there as well. He's starting to get away, and Fernandez as well. Now this is looking out the back of Rasco with Bandera. A lot of moves there for the chasing McLaren. It was a slight bit of a slide over the sausage curb on the exit. Rasco pushes Bandera way onto the grass there, saying, if you want to get around me, go for it, but I'm not going to make it easy. Bandera gets the move done, though. Just planting it on the apex. He would get Rasco. And you might be thinking, well, what about the lead? Huh? What happened to that? Clifford and Loverik, this would be the turning point of the battle for these two. So Loverik, using all of his experience and seeing what other drivers have done, he threw it around the outside. Clifford trying to cover it off, a little bit of contact there as they head on through. The Audi, just a little bit more acceleration there out of the corner, maybe using a bit of a side bump to gain some extra momentum. Clifford would try the same move, that Lovering pulled on him, but it would not work. The 52. Beautiful defense, parking it right on the apex. And that would be the final move. That's where these two would be staying until the very end of the race. But that gap incredibly tight between both of them. Clifford did look for something into the penultimate corner and would try it again in that last corner, but Loverank says, don't you worry, I have got everything sorted out. So Loverank would come home to win the first race of the evening, 30 minutes under his belt. Clifford there right behind him. Then it was Portis, Keogh, Wilson, Fernandez, Hendrickson, Hernandez, Bandera, and Rasco rounding out your top 10. But of course, folks, Super Sprint, 2 races, 30 and 30 here for this round, and it was a much drier experience, although there was still a little bit of precipitation on the circuit. It actually would not change things up all too much. There would be a dry line exposed rather quickly, and from there drivers would very quickly come to grips, and hoping that the dry weather would stay into this second race. Same amount of time for everything. Now, it did get a little bit cloudy, but it did not rain at all for the rest of qualifying, which allowed for some pretty fast times, of course. And would that continue into race number 2? No, it wouldn't, as that ground a lot more damp than before. Hendrickson, though, taking pole position. Clifford moving up to P2 this time. And one of the big stories is that Aston Martin right there of Keogh not having a great qualifying at all. He started all the way back at the tail end of the field. But much like that first race, the second race, the parade lap, nice and relaxed for these drivers. Keogh would be looking to gain plenty of positions, but soon enough we would be lining up side by side for that second race. Hendrickson with his John Alesi Esports teammate right behind him. Loverank would definitely have no qualms using the Lamborghini as a pick, but we have to look towards the start as Hendrickson and Clifford go side by side into one. It is Hendrickson with a little bit of an advantage, but a tap there spins both of them out. Hendrickson way off the line, and Clifford actually got away quite well with that. We'll see it from the back end of the 757. You can just see all those positions bleeding away as Hendrickson waiting for the traffic to clear. Lemaire making a surprise visit, surely just to check up on him. No big problems there. And this is the perspective, of course, from that third place driver, Loverank, as the Italian C parts ahead of him. Does not have to question that at all. Says, sure thing, guys. And it will take the lead of the race, but a lot more happening here right behind as Sanchez with a little tap on Portis. The inside line somehow working. Wilson having to get away from Rasco and Fernandez. So all of these McLarens, plus the Honda, getting the front end of the field. You also see Bandera and Clifford there. They were discussing who is going to go where. But by the end of it, Portis gets ahead of Wilson. Clifford gets ahead of Bandera. Then Keogh making a huge leap already at the start of that race. What does he do? Well, it's quite simple. Just why not grab a couple of positions, 4 overtakes, 1 corner, and his campaign to get to the top end would begin. Now, Nelson here in the BMW would be, I guess you could say, the 4th casualty. Him and Keogh both running wide, but into that last corner, I'm not certain what happens. I think he just gets a little bit onto the curb, a little bit of standing water. That spins him out. Everyone else would drive through. Thankfully, a light tap, much like Sanchez in that first race, and he would be back underway. Lemaire as well, gaining a position off of that one. Now, if you're looking for some incredibly clean racing, long, hard-fought battles, no further than these two right here, Portis and Rasco, would not let this fight die quickly. As you can see, they are side by side. Behind them, it's Wilson and Fernandez trying to see if they can maybe gain something if these two fight long and hard enough and maybe land them as well. but just enough space between the two of them. No contact from either of them. But that braking zone's coming up, and if you're Rasco, that's good news because the inside line is yours. You can just pin it right there on the apex. Portis trying to throw it around the outside, but finds that the speed and the handling and whatnot could just not play into his favor. But such a great little bit of racing from these two. Rasco overcooking it a little bit into the corner, almost compromises the overtake he just did. I guess he was so surprised that he was almost losing himself. Now, of course, Lanham and Fernandez in this, but a touch from the number 8 would send the other McLaren spinning around. That would be some post-race lookovers from the stewards. Now Hernandez with Clifford bearing down on him. It seems to just keep going. Clifford, all the experience under his belt. He would just go down the inside. There's Fernandez from earlier. Hendrickson almost going into the back of him. That would have been probably not how he would want to start race number 2. Now Waters gets it incorrectly into turn number 1. And Pocket, with the cleaner line, of course, through the corner, would just sail past him. Absolutely nothing Waters could have done. Getting off the throttle, just letting him through. There could have maybe been an overtake here, but Waters not feeling confident on Pocket's mistake. And Clifford wasn't done just yet, as he began to eye up Lanham to see if he could maybe grab another spot here. A little bit of a hip check, though, while not intentional, did send Lanham off. Now Rasco and Hendrickson, as if one spin wasn't enough, how about another one? Rasco, that rear right quarter panel tap from the Lamborghini. Thankfully, he would only lose one position, but clouds would start to move in as Hernandez found himself with that familiar-looking Lamborghini on his tail, forcing him to the outside, but it was all for naught. Hendrickson well and truly clear. Now, Lemaire and Waters, this is further back in the field, but there's action all over the place. As Waters feeling confident here, almost clearing but backing out, but then decides to just completely send it into that final corner. Does get the job done, but there is a tap, 1 tap, 2, and Lemaire would spin him out. No one else would be caught in that, but the rain would start to fall as drivers, some of the standing water on those curbs really causing problems and spinning out at turn number 1. It wasn't just one driver, it was 2. Lanham, though, getting on the inside, unsettling the car. Almost a perfect pirouette. 270 degrees of rotation. But getting righted. This is checking in. Now, this was a beautiful little back and forth between Stapleton and Lemaire. So it's that first overtake. Stapleton tries to get the job done. Now Loverink rejoined. This would have been a blue flag for both of these guys, but in the meantime, Stapleton managing to use that to get back ahead. But Lemaire was not going to give up the ghost that easily, making it difficult for the Ferrari to pull away. Stapleton would have the position and starting to cover off what he can. Lemaire looks to the inside. Realizes that Stapleton's not going to defend it, but then feigns a move on the inside. Stapleton thinking that it's going to be go time and just runs himself wide. That would give up the position, and Lemaire would give a nice little wave in the mirror, and that would be the last overtake for the race as Loverink came home to win race number 2 back-to-back. Ahead of Sanchez, Portis, Keogh, Hendrickson, Clifford, Hernandez, Wilson, Rasco, and Lanham. So there you have it, folks. Last week's highlights right there for you. And if you're wondering what the standings look like, Loverink leading this championship and, of course, leading the pro class over Clifford by 135 points. So if Loverink can gain at least, I'll say 100, we'll say at least 20 points, 25 points, he will have secured the championship going into the final round at Bathurst. Frizza, who is not here tonight, is leading the silver class over Lanham by 4 points. The big problem, though, Lanham has showed up. So this will tilt the silver championship in Lanham's favor. But if you thought 4 points was close, how about you look over at the Pro-Ams as Fernandez leads Hernandez by 2 points. Depending on how this race goes, that gap could widen, that gap could close up a bit, that gap could completely swing the other way. And for these two, it would be decided in the final race of the season. Lanham as well will have to do that for him, as he is not completely safe despite his closest opponent not being present. And then for the amateurs, we only have one here tonight. It's Audenique Stapleton in the 35 Ferrari. However, Stapleton's closest opponent, Migliori, not here. Stapleton's second in the championship. It is Migliori leading it for the amateurs, so this will be a great opportunity for the Ferrari to gain some extra points and overtake, and depending on whether or not Migliori shows up next week at Bathurst, could secure this championship, unless another amateur horse from the darkness aims to overtake. But now that we are all caught up to speed, folks, qualifying here at Indianapolis right now does see Loverink, the first and only driver in the 34s, although Jonathan Clifford is improving as well. 35-25 for the 999, right on board with him. He is coming to the back straight. Of course, we're all very familiar with Indianapolis playing host to the 500, and the road course part of it being sort of forgotten in a way. If you remember, Formula One used to race here, that whole tire debacle causing a lot of headaches for fans back when that happened, and the season after being the last one before the Formula One team would return to the United States. So we do see some drifting action, but a lot of improvements across the field. And Clifford has lost his. One driver who hasn't in the Lamborghini is William Hendrickson. He has gained quite a lot of time as Portis goes second. And Hendrickson, provisional pole here at Indianapolis. Loverink is not going to improve. 32 thousandths of a second separate the two teammates. Portis, of course, just getting that improvement in. Clifford going back out, making some slight setup adjustments as he seems to do time and time again. Rasco putting in his best, 35.52. That's enough for 5th. Sanchez in 6th. It's Carpenter, then Keogh, 2 Aston Martins right close to each other. Then Fernandez, the first driver to be more than a second away from the top time. And then it's Lemaire, Lanham, Hernandez, Pocket, Stapleton, and Waters. Now, if you're Hernandez, being in this position behind the man that you're chasing down by 3 spots is not what you want. There is no improvement for the 888, so he has got to do everything he can to try and make this work for him. Pocket coming down the front stretch right now, I think just clocked in his best lap. He did a 37.96, has not improved. But that is going to be fine for him. Let's check in with Hendrickson, who is gaining a little bit of time. Although the problem is his teammate is gaining more time than he's already put on this track. There's Portis. He does not improve. Hendrickson goes faster, opens up the gap a little bit. Loverink close line on the inside and does take that provisional pole, 34.79. So he's starting to get some speed. Keogh stays 7th position. Rasco stays 5th. You have Sanchez in the back. He'll go to 5th. And then I believe behind that's Lucas Lemaire. staying 10th. Fernandez doesn't improve. Lanham not on an improvement either. He'll stay down in 11th position. Clifford ready to get his flying lap started after those changes. And the only other driver right now is Craig Pocket on an improvement, but his Delta's not looking anywhere close enough to Hernandez's pace. He's 7/10 just about away from the BMW, but his improvement is only a couple of tenths. That's not enough to really make the move stick, but at the very least you can give Stapleton a bit more of an issue to try and usurp your throne. Pocket will cross it, he'll improve. There's Waters behind. Waters having a bit of a road excursion, so right now 67 down in 15th, a 140.58 for him. We'll check in with Portis. He has been slowly gaining time. He's not going to have enough to get Hendrickson out of the way, but could be enough to get into the 34s. And he will by just enough. 34.94 for the 84. Hopefully 4 is his lucky number. Larry Lanham, another driver who is improving right now. He's got a 10th over himself. And about 10 seconds behind that is Hernandez. He's going green right now. Portis going green. Clifford just about dead even. So we'll see who can make up position. Still 3 minutes to go in qualifying here. Lemaire not improving the lap. Lanham does. Gets closer, but still 2/10 off of a top 10 start. And Hernandez will close up another 10th to Lanham. Clifford crossing the line. Does not go faster. And Loverink will start his flying lap. And I believe just behind him was Hendrickson. Austin Carpenter in the 883, a pretty solid season from what he's had the time to do. Right now in 8th position. 5 thousandths between himself and Rasco. Let's ride on board with the Aston Martin. You see Sanchez ahead, also trying to push this lap. Sanchez actually on an out lap rather, sorry. So for Carpenter, could maybe get close enough to use a slipstream, but I highly doubt it. Unless Sanchez really decides to compromise his lap to try and aid Carpenter in his fight against Rasco right now for position number 6 here in qualifying for this race. He's kept that 10th though, keeping it right close on the curb, coming out onto the front straight. Is this going to put him higher than 6th? It won't, but it'll be 100th now behind the man just in front of him. Carpenter could be threatening this position. Clifford, in the meantime, also improving. It's hovering between 2 and 3 tenths. It would not be enough to get around Portis, but it could be enough to get into the 34s. And he'll have one more lap after this to make it stick. Crosses the line and doesn't get into the 34s. It's a 35.07 for himself. But like I said, one final lap to go for him. So we'll leave him be. We'll check around. Stapleton has found a pretty significant amount of time right now. Almost a full second. And if he can make this stick and gain just a little bit more, Pocket could be moved down into 14th position. We'll see what it is. He crosses the line, and it's not going to be enough. It's still 3 tenths here for the 35. And this is definitely going to be the biggest push lap. Same with Hernandez. He's got just about 4 tenths to Lanham. Could make this work. Lanham has retired to the pit. So is Fernandez, Portis, and Pocket. Ben Keogh trying to maybe get better than Carpenter's personal best right now. As Carpenter is 2/3 of a second. Does Keogh go faster? He does. But he's not going to move at all. His Delta looked very good. I was just glancing at it before we clicked over to him. And I guess it wasn't enough. Speaking of Deltas, Clifford, the last time. He'll be coming through. The checkered flag is out. But does he have enough in him to sidestep Portis? If it's 2/10 exact, it would barely be enough. And as he crosses the line, he gets pole position. 34.77 for Clifford. Where did that come from? Lovrink stopping it on pit lane. Realizes there's no way he's getting faster than that. He can't believe it. I can't believe it. And now it's just Scott Waters, who's still on circuit along with Stapleton. I think Stapleton's bailed out of this lap. Something's happened in the meantime, because he is just right about now at where his personal best was at, was a 38.18. Keogh, desperate for anything he can. Same with Rasco, and I think Sanchez as well, but it's just sort of pointless for Sanchez. He's already a couple tenths down, and speaking of a couple tenths down, Rasco and Keogh, who are even now, have dropped those precious times, and Keogh just sends it into the wall. He knows it's over. And Rasco as well, pulling off to the side. He doesn't want to do anything with it, and Sanchez as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Clifford taking pole position, 25 thousandths of a second over Lovrink, and we now get ready for the penultimate round of the Sprint Series. 6 of 7, and of course, if you know me, you know what time it is. And of course, it is going to be the grid walk, because who doesn't like looking at these cars while they're, you know, up there getting all situated and ready to go for another round of racing. The last moments of setup change before we get racing. And of course, a pit stop thrown in there, or two, depending on how well or how poorly your race goes. But Clifford just getting that pole position away from Lovrink. He is desperate to keep this championship hope alive. If he can keep that gap lower than 155 points, assuming, or sorry, 158 points, assuming that Lovrink is not going to show up next week, then he should be able, if he has a perfect run with winning the race, with pole position, and with fastest lap, could take that championship right out from under the nose of Lovrink. But Hendrickson, keeping his John Lacey Esports teammate nice and company. It's a bit of a role reversal from race 2 last week at the Red Bull Ring. And then Portis lining up 4th, and Sanchez 5th position for him. Another top 5 position start for the Mexican driver. He has been on rapid levels of improvement compared to previous outings. And it's Carpenter and Rasco, 6th and 7th. And then Keogh there just on the right. He's going to be on that 4th row of the grid. Behind him is Fernandez with Lemaire. These two guys seem to be getting closer and closer to each other as this championship has carried on. And Larry Lanham, the first driver outside of the top 10. And Jaden Hernandez on the right in the BMW. Not as high up as he would like, but perhaps Indianapolis a bit of a weak circuit for him. And it's Craig Pocket getting that car swapped up, probably just sitting there waiting for the drive button to light up. Then it is Stapleton, hoping for an improvement on that final lap, but missing a corner or something and having to throw everything away. And Scott Waters will round out the back of the grid here. 15 cars, unfortunately, but hopefully next week at Bathurst we can get some higher numbers. If you can hear it, those engines are on, which means we are just less than 30 seconds away from these cars going around. And while we give these guys a bit of privacy to get ready and out there, of course, we got to give a shout out to Simrigs for sponsoring the 17th season of our incredible Sprint Series out of Melbourne, Australia. These guys are one of the top sim racing equipment storefronts in all of Australia. Of course, they are going to be giving their fellow Kangaroos service with no questions asked, as well as the Kiwis over in New Zealand. But if you're like anybody else in the world and you don't happen to live close enough to those countries or within those countries, if you send them an email, explain the situation you're in, they'd be more than happy to give you some business. And if you are supporting our organization via the Patreon, Of course, thank you to everyone who is supporting us that way. You guys do get a 5% discount on your purchases. So whether you're looking to upgrade, you got a birthday coming up, anniversary, or you just got some money you want to spend, Simrigs has got you covered. So thank you again to them for sponsoring another season, and hopefully we get to see them again in later seasons. But folks, back out on track here. This parade lap well and truly underway. 1 hour on the clock and one mandatory stop in this race. And we will see who has it in them to get to the checkered flag first here at Indianapolis. There is going to be a pit window. It will open up 5 minutes after this race goes green and will close 5 minutes before the checkered flag comes out, and it's just fuel this time. So same as last week, slightly different stage for it. And of course, not allowing them to come in wherever. And if you're someone like Keo, that probably won't even do too much. Last time we were racing that second race in Austria, Keo stayed out as long as he could. He really made that sort of fuel go for a long. He didn't have it in him to win the race, but it was still a hell of an effort. But we are now lined up side by side. Clifford with that impressive pole position, just barely. Lovrink will be looking to get around him as soon as possible, stretch the legs, and try to get to the finish line first. Right behind him, it is the Lamborghini of Hendrickson. And folks, we get ready for race number 6 of 7 here, and it's already off to a flying start. Look at Clifford and Lovrink getting a huge gap on Portis. Hendrickson caught napping, is getting swamped a little bit by the fields, very close up front, but Lovrink does have the position, but completely misses his break point. Clifford gets away, Portis gets away, Sanchez has to get hard and heavy on the brakes to avoid contact, but does get picked up, I believe, by Carpenter. So Sanchez going from 5th to 15th in just a couple of corners. And it's already great stuff for Clifford. This is exactly what he needs. He could use Portis to just hold up Lovrink as long as possible, but the 52 knows the pace is there. It's just a case of getting around. Easier said than done. Towards the back of the field, Pocket having to just follow Stapleton. Sanchez already getting a move on Waters. And in fact, Lanham's had something happen to him because he's now down in 15th. Not certain what happened there. Carpenter's off. Looks like he came together with Pocket. I have no idea what happened there. So into the braking zone. Oh! Pocket just completely missed. Pocket just completely missed his braking zone, and unfortunately had Carpenter as his wall. And we see the 713 of Pocket. He's still parked up on the side there. But after the first lap, Clifford extending his lead over Portis and Lovrink. Lovrink already starting to make a bit of a charge. He'll look to the inside. Does he go for the move? Heavy braking into that first turn, but not close enough. Portis for right now. Look at the drive he gets. I think Lovrink got a little bit loose on the back. So he'll lose maybe half a tenth or so to the Honda. These inner workings of Indianapolis, quite tricky to get right. It feels like you have so much space and no space at all. Lovrink maybe feigning some moves. Not certain. He isn't comfortable with any overtake just yet. So we check in with Waters. He's behind Stapleton. There's Carpenter. But it has been a very quiet start, all things considered, for this race. Portis right now comfortably ahead in second, but knows he can't rest easy just now as he does get it wrong. Loverink has found a little bit of room on the inside, and he does get that job done. So now the only driver ahead of him is Clifford. And someone may be looking out the rear view and saying, wait a second, that's not a Honda. Is the race on? It's going to be tricky for Portis. Hendrickson arriving on the scene. I thought he was going to go for it on the inside. He thought about it, but realized that there was not going to be any sort of room for him to play with. Keo in 5th right now. He might find some time here because of that mistake, but as quickly as that time was gained, he's immediately lost it. Hendrickson will be the second of this team to give Portis some hell. And just behind you see Rasco and Fernandez. Looks like we have lost Pocket very early on in this race. Not how he wants to start and end his night, but maybe looking to get a little bit of extra time before Bathurst. That track far more unforgiving than Indianapolis could ever hope to be. But Clifford very comfortably 2.5 seconds right now is what he has to work with. Broadcast controller at one point said 3. I was surprised. I didn't think it was that crazy. But after a bit of a firecracker start, it slowed down significantly, but that pit window is going to be opening in just about 7 seconds. A reminder, it is fuel. I wonder if we'll see anybody come in right as it opens. So there it is. Let's check the map. Let's see. Oh, and it looks like, yeah, Carpenter. The earliest possible moment to pit, and he's going to take it. Is this the undercut to end all undercuts? He is 12th right now. Pocket has rejoined. So we'll keep that in mind. Carpenter in P12. We'll see where he ends up by the checkered flag. We'll return to the front here. Rasco and Fernandez have also seemed to settle down a bit. Trevor's probably looking at this more of a marathon. It has been a while since we have done a full hour-long race in the Sprint Series after those back-to-back supers. Thankfully, this race and the next one, drivers will not have to worry about sort of a break in between. Keo starting to fall off a little bit on Hendrickson. Pace not there as laps previous. And Portis as well, I think barely losing time. Ooh, there goes Hendrickson. He's in. So he wants to undercut Portis. Is anybody else going to decide to do the same? Keo doesn't, neither does Rasco or Fernandez. Lemaire passes it up. Same with Sanchez. Hernandez. Ooh, Lando's got a little bit of damage on the back. Probably explains. And the front. That probably explains why he was dead last at one point. Stapleton and Waters could be coming in. Stapleton does not, and neither does Waters. So right now it is Carpenter and Hendrickson who've gotten that first pit stop cleared. Pocket is in the pits for a different reason, but should be rejoining. This race has very much come to a standstill on action. Clifford, 2.6, so he's building a bit of a gap right now to Loverink. 150 points on the table for the win. And how much that gap will reduce, I will report next week. We go racing for the last time this season before our break. Should be about a month and a half. I have no idea what the schedule is looking like. Do not ask. because I only find out at roughly the same time as everybody else, which is right when they drop it. It looks like Pocket's out of the pits finally. Good for him. And Hendrickson as well. I theorize Clifford, Lovrink, Portis are going to stretch this stint as long as possible. Now, much like the stops last week. Oh, actually, refueling time isn't fixed. Interesting. So how does that play out? And how does this play on the tires? I know somebody said it earlier. About 50 minutes. Yeah, W2W Piper saying, especially when you do 50 minutes on a slow puncture. Oof. But this circuit's going to eat these tires up. So we'll see who comes in for some fresh Pirellis and who decides that it's just a little bit of a rehydration for their car. Look at the gap right now, though. Still 2.6. So for these two, it is pretty consistent, but Clifford's starting to come up to some lap traffic of Pocket. 713, just getting a little bit of a shakedown. I'll wait for the car to be dropped back onto the ground. I'll have to get out of the way soon. Well, the gap is about 1.5 seconds, so doesn't have to move over just yet, and now will. And I think he's gonna go in the pit lane. No, he's not going in the pit lane. So Lovrink now has to catch up and get around. This is gonna absolutely kill his momentum over Clifford. And as I say that, Pocket actually finding a perfect time to get out of the way for not just Lovrink, but also Portis and Keo. And I think may also get out of the way for Fernandez and Rasco. Nope, has found a nice little slot to put himself into. So these two McLarens are going to have to get around the 713. There's Rasco getting close, getting towards the back straight, so it would be a perfect time for Pocket to get out of the way. Not hold these two up, not make either of them lose any amount of time. Very good conditions for today's race. We have a yellow, and that is for Pocket, parking it up somewhere. There he is. Not certain what's going on there. Could be mechanical, could be connection, don't know exactly. The bar is green, so he's good. But, yeah, this might be a mechanical failure on his part. Don't know what's causing it. Hopefully it gets resolved. Should never want to be sitting there on the sidelines for the whole race. But 10 minutes have already ticked by. We've had 2 pit stops, 15 drivers, and it looks like Pocket's gone back racing again. Unless he did the biggest blue flag pass by that we've ever seen. Actually, check the track map. Sort of, yeah. The ones behind are Stapleton and Waters. Those two aren't really close to do much of anything. Checking back in with the leader, though, Clifford has lost 0.3 over that last lap. Compared to what he was doing earlier, it was steady around 2.6, 2.5. I don't know if he caught another blue flag in the meantime. But whatever the case may be, Lovrink starting to close up, and it's actually a pretty similar gap down to Portis. 2.3 to those 3 guys. Keo, though, within 2, just barely. But hasn't really been improving. Keo's last lap, 0.2 slower. And Portis is... wow, that's actually surprising. 0.4 slower for Clifford over the Audi of Lovrink. If it was blue flag related, we will certainly see to it when they cross the start-finish line to round out Sector 3. Of course, these splits here only update when drivers get into the next sector. I have more of a live gap here in the broadcast controller, but That doesn't really do too much, because that will give you the immediate gap, not the actual gap. So let's see, has Clifford found some time? He has, a couple of tenths now, or sorry, just about a tenth. And he does have more lap traffic that he will have to get around. That is Carpenter. Keep in mind, Carpenter has already cleared his first pit stop and just has to drive straight to the end. Well, everybody else will have to come in, so let's see where he ends up. But for the time being, he will have to get in the way of Clifford and Lovering when they do approach, and Portis as well. Look at the gap. My God, Portis has lost a huge amount of time to Lovering compared to before. But still 2.5. That is surprising. I don't know if I saw Lovering get a little bit sideways or if I was just imagining it. But I think Portis is starting to slowly lose his pace. I think Keo is starting to gain something right now over this Honda. These S's of Indianapolis, very technical. Whenever you think Indianapolis, you think high speeds and lack of brakes, but when you start throwing in these corners, you start throwing in the road configuration, nope, you get to do a lot of not holding the throttle down. Remember when they first dropped this in the American DLC pack some time ago, I was expecting more use of the main surface itself, so imagine my surprise when I'd forgotten the configuration that had been used for many years prior in other series. Oh, Hernandez and Lanham, actually. This is starting to heat up a little bit. Lanham's been doing a great job of catching up to the AAA BMW. That gap right now. 6/10 it stayed. May have gained a little bit. He was a tenth quicker. If he's able to keep that up, should be right behind Hernandez in 6 laps. That's going to be a tall order right now. I think Lanham just got a couple corners wrong. Not a threatening cloud in sight. 30 minutes at the very least. It'll be nice and sunny. Should probably stay that way. That gap has grown another 10, so could be seeing a little back and forth between these two. Clifford opening up some space. 2.8. Will we see 3 seconds when he comes back around? Oh, it could very well be 3 seconds. Line, yep, there it is. So 3 seconds the gap from first to second. Usually it's the other way around. It's usually Lovering that's starting to either, well, more often than not before, quickly, but in this season slowly building gaps. But I guess Lovering getting a taste of his own medicine. And Portis as well. A similar fate for him, as he's 3 seconds behind, and Keo, his efforts not blossoming the way he would have thought, as we do see the Aston Martin of Carpenter, the other one, having to let him through. So it's a very quiet race, a very slow pace. We should be seeing a lot more action once more of these pit stops come through, and definitely more towards the end as drivers start running out of time. But everybody's playing the long game here tonight. Don't make a move unless you are absolutely certain. I am curious to see how Carpenter and Henderson, though, make these very early pit stops work. Because opening the map right now, we can see nobody in the pit lane. But if he can stay close to some, Carpenter, oh, this could be a top 10, easily. But that's a lot of luck and a lot of skill, and Well, he's really got to work for those. Rasco and Fernandez still, these very stalematey gaps we're seeing right now. Although, Fernandez gaining a couple of tenths. We see Lemaire and Sanchez behind. That was still over a second for them. But do we see Fernandez starting to get a little bit of speed? Same car for both of these guys, but probably very slight setup changes just to complement their driving style. Right out the back here of the Simrigs Racing 135 of Rasco. Fernandez doesn't get the corner well, so that'll open things right back up. Half a second. I think it might be just about a second at that point. We'll see. Oh, Hendrickson getting around Waters off camera. See if we can maybe catch a replay of that. Ah, Waters going wide. Rejoining. Opens up the door on the inside. Hendrickson doesn't even need to lay the boot in it. So a little mistake there for Waters. We'll see him down to 13th. You wonder if maybe that would have just happened regardless, and it would have. So he still has to get his pit stop sorted out. And behind there is Clifford, your race leader. 3.7, almost 4 seconds right now. Lovrink is slowly watching the possibility of a win disappear. He may be looking towards pit strategy to save him. Keep in mind that qualifying lap time, the pole lap from Clifford, less than half a tenth. Good to see how much time that he's actually gained over these last few laps compared to what the quali difference would suggest is surprising. But Jonathan has certainly been practicing a lot of Indy for this race. He gets around that back marker, so Waters will not be any barrier. Although Loverink's pulling up at a pretty unfortunate time. Well, that front straight coming up, so Loverink could have Waters get around there, and I think that's probably what's going to happen. How close is Loverink? Close enough. He does see him, yep. So Waters just holding the throttle. So they'll go side by side over the line. Loverink's happy about that. Waters is as well. Portis is losing his time. Keogh, though, also losing out. Can't seem to catch the Honda. And Fernandez, very surprisingly, after being, what, just about half a second, is now just about a second behind Rasco. That is really the only battle we're seeing. A little drift there. Fernandez, eager and early on the throttle. Trying not to lose the back end of the McLaren. We know anybody that has spent any amount of time with the McLaren knows how quickly that thing will kill you. Waters getting Portis around him quickly. Just have to wait for Keogh. Now Carpenter will be racing for position over Waters. His lap times have been in those mid to high 36s. Waters has been in the 44s, but, or no, that's not, sorry, in the 40s rather. So he should be making up all this time. And now the other Aston Martin, Keogh has gotten through. This point it is going to be a possible position change, but Carpenter's got to do it cleanly. Waters knows there will not be a blue flag for the car behind, and for Carpenter, you can see it, there is nobody. that first turn quite a ways back, and Waters is not even going to put up a fight. He knows the speed of this Aston Martin driver and knows that he has absolutely no reason to fight it. He'll just let him through and carry on. Craig Pocket is a long way back and several laps down from Carpenter and Waters, so even if he does catch up, he's not going to be a threat. He'll have to unlap himself. Looks like 5 times, which would also involve unlapping himself from everybody else. So Pocket right now is just doing a little bit of hot lapping until the end of the race. We'll check in with Hernandez and Lanham. Lanham not too long ago was pulling in, but has lost his momentum, so he's got to find it again. We'll see how far back he is. Oh, it's actually a second now, so something's gone wrong at one of the corners. Hernandez going wide a little bit, almost falling off and spinning out. Thankfully, he spent plenty of time in the BMW to know every little bit about it. So just another save for him. Almost 4 seconds right now, first to second. Lovrink has stopped the bleeding a little bit, but it's really going to take a Herculean effort to get back into contention for the win, as we see Lemaire coming in for his mandatory stop just about halfway through this race. And Stapleton with Hendrickson side by side for these two, but Hendrickson having the drive out of the corner. Does Stapleton go for a move? Later on the brakes, almost going into the back there. But thankfully, Hendrickson turned in. And for the 35, that is a position lost. And a pit stop still to go. These early, very early pit stops are actually kind of working out for Carpenter and Hendrickson. So they are making up spots prior to pit stops. Continue to make more as the race goes on. Lemaire, ooh, way off the road there for Stapleton. Lemaire coming back out on circuit soon enough. I always forget how long the pit lane is here at Indianapolis. It is kind of ridiculous. The yellow flag is out. Pocket is off in the aether. And we have lost him, unfortunately. Lemaire rejoining the racing surface. There is Clifford having to get around Stapleton. This might open up an attack. Stapleton right now is 11th. Waters has come into the pit lane. Does Stapleton have the ability to defend? No, right off the surface. And right back into... Oh, Lovrink almost going into the back there, the 35. I'm off the track to right in front of an Audi. Stapleton just has to get to the checkered flag to take over the lead of the amateur class. Scott Waters, there he is. Mandatory stop. So 4 drivers before the halfway point of this race have gotten the mandatory fuel. Lanham's gotten around Hernandez in the meantime and has already built a pretty good gap, actually. I had a bet on it. It might have been Hernandez going off. I would say turn 1, maybe 2. So the car rather, adorned with the number 8, sits in the position of a very similar number. But the 3/8 of the BMW behind him want that spot back. That gap is a second, and then some. Lemaire has completely lost sight of Stapleton. Right now, Lovrink coming up. Those blue flags will be waving. his brake point, does let the Audi through. Continue on with this race. Waters coming out of the pit lane just now. A little confused by pit exit. I've been confused by the pit exit here. I can't even lie. Running the track when it first dropped, and I was expecting more of a defined path, but I got something decently okay. Keo and Portis, they have completely lost contact with each other. It's been the Honda running the show for third position right now. As Keo is catching up to Stapleton, who pulls way off to the side. Will not hold him up at all. Plenty of drivers passing. Oh no, Loverink has come in, so this might be the undercut attempt. Clifford will see this, and he is going to have to really push this lap, because you are in that pit lane for a long time. Or perhaps Clifford just stays out, continues to build up more and more of a gap, just so that way he can be absolutely certain. Fernandez has come in, so he's fallen off of his battle. Lanham, oh, Waters, that was a little bit close there. Almost getting sideswiped by the Not Bone Garage Ferrari entry. So I want to see what Clifford's plan is here, because he could easily come in. Depending on what the gap looks like on exit, he may have to spend a few laps catching up and then getting around. Which, considering the laps for Loverig and Clifford have been pretty good. I mean, the best lap still belongs to Clifford, and that's a 10th, so he has come in. Loverink is just exiting the pit lane. He's just got the limiter off. So if he somehow wants to take the lead, he really has to find 7th gear. Clifford will have, if I'm a betting man, the farthest pit box. He doesn't. That's surprising. Fernandez is out there, so that just leaves Stapleton way down the field with Carpenter with the overtake on the front straight. So Stapleton falling to 13th. Carpenter, that early pit stop puts him back up into 12th. But with Clifford in the pits, from Portis down to Sanchez, then Lanham, Hernandez, and Stapleton. And as I say that, Lanham and Hernandez both coming in. Ooh, Hernandez, that's a smart move there. Lanham was on the limiter very early, so Jaden wanted to speed up a bit, so that way he could close that gap up. We'll do that as Lanham parks up. Hernandez is a long way down. Does he hit his marks, though? Yes, he does. So Loverink gaining some spots. Clifford has just exited the pit lane now. That was perfectly timed from him. So once your top 4 cycle through, Clifford will take the lead over. Hernandez is coming down, and I think he's got the job done on Lanham. He has. So it looks like early pit limiter for the number 8 has lost him any sort of benefit he had. Yeah, Hernandez already back out there. Doesn't look like Lanham fixed any damage on his car. Not that that really should be affecting his performance too much. Oh, and Stapleton has come into the pits. and just now being released from the box. We do see Lanham there, just exiting. I feel like it's kind of ironic to have a Speedway sign on a pit lane as long and as slow as this one. But I am not the one making sponsorships. Portis leading the race, though, but still has that pit stop to clear. Same with Keogh and Rasco and Sanchez, who gets a little sideways there. So let's check and see overhead if Portis decides to come in. If he does, it would be undercut. He does not. Keogh as well staying out. And then we'll see if Rasco and Sanchez decide to do much of the same. Well, this is actually a battle for position. Fernandez getting the job completed through the corner rather than before or after it. So Fernandez dropping a spot. Does he go for the re-aggression into turn 1? Fernandez covers it off and doesn't compromise his exit. Fernandez down to 10th. Lucas Lemaire up in 8th. Where is he? He's a long ways ahead, actually. He's got Keogh behind him. This will be a blue flag situation. Yeah, it should be. But Keogh hasn't come in, or Portis, or Rasco, or Sanchez. So of the 15 we started with here at Indy, we are down to 14. And only 4. We have one pit stop left to go here. And you can see that was Fernandez in the background. Those blue flags should be waving. Keogh hopefully getting past Lemaire soon enough. We're doing a little bit of racing here. This isn't really what you want to be doing. I guess Lemaire really wanted to just have Keogh work for the position. Not like it really matters, though, because Keogh's decided that he wants to pit. So this may be the undercut on Portis, who has opted to stay out. Rasco has seen Keogh come in, so he may be looking to push this lap. Has Sanchez decided the same thing? He has. Getting a little loose there. But, yeah, it's been a very slow race. Everybody's cleared those stops, though. Except for your top 3. We'll rejoin these two. Hernandez and Carpenter for 10th position. Carpenter, one of the first to actually stop. Him and Hendrickson came in pretty much right as the window opened. Now finding some speed with the slipstream. Does he go for a dive down the inside? He will. And for Carpenter, textbook overtake. That's 10th position for the Aston Martin. And he can maybe look further, as Fernandez is only 3 seconds or so ahead right now. You can see the pink Aston Martin there in the background. So the 26 might be the next target. We'll see, though. It's going to be tricky. It's about 3.5 seconds or so. Close to 4. But if these gaps stay the way they do, Carpenter might not have a shot at all. So 36-37 for Fernandez. Or sorry, 37-26 rather. Him, and then a 37-41 for Carpenter, but that was with an overtake. So you wonder just how close these two are going to be. Sanchez, he's in the pit lane. Clifford will take this position over. Rasco is still out there, so is Portis. They're taking one from Keogh last week and staying out as long as humanly possible. Still 17 minutes left to actually get that pit stop done, so it's not really going to be that much of an issue if you stay out for too long. And I think Clifford has just gotten around Sanchez. Yes, he has. Keogh as well will take over the position. Loverink too. Loverink still chipping away at Keogh's lead. So that gap is 3 seconds, but slowly closing. We'll keep an eye on these two as Sanchez comes out of the pits ahead of Waters. So Waters doesn't have to worry about blue flags for a little bit. For quite a long while, actually. Because the next driver back is Portis. Passing up the pit lane. Same with Rasco. Yeah, these guys are really trying to see how far they can go. Might be a challenge. Hopefully they have enough time for that pit stop to actually be considered cleared. Because if not, there's a pretty hefty penalty that comes with it. We've seen it before in the past with some drivers who are a few laps down. They'll just keep racing until the very end. Stapleton goes wide. That'll let Sanchez through. And I believe Waters is still down a lap, so even if he catches up to Stapleton, gets the overtake done, I'll have to go all the way around the circuit again to actually be granted the opportunity of 13th. Lemaire and Fernandez. This is starting to bubble. The 26 chasing down the 510. Ferrari versus McLaren. And right now it is Fernandez with a bit of an upper hand. A bit more confident. Everything across the board, the car, the setup, the feeling of the track. As we see Lemaire get a little bit loose there. They'll go side by side down the front straight, and I think Lemaire might back out of this one. He does, but does he look for a move on the inside into turn number 1? No, he doesn't. His brake point, his brake timing, exactly the same, but Fernandez going a little deep there. Could give Lemaire a chance to come back, but absolutely nothing comes of it. I don't know if he caught it there, way in the background. There he is, Austin Carpenter. Like watching a storm from over the horizon. You just know it's coming. As Portis goes in for his mandatory stop, we'll get that cleared. It's just Rasco still out there. And Keogh does not put up a fight. Although he might. No, he doesn't. He gives up the position willingly. Loverink flashing lights to say thank you. Loverink now to third. Or sorry, to fourth. As Portis comes out of the pits. Actually ahead of both of these drivers. So for Portis, 18.5 minutes to hold on to position. Oh, sorry. It's actually going to be Clifford. That'll push the Honda back into P2. But if these two can stay ahead long enough, we should maybe see Portis taking second. But Loverink is not one to give up that easily. So lap time, let's see. Clifford is just under 3/10, or sorry, just over 3/10 faster. And Portis probably knows this. Maybe communicating with Clifford saying, let me get a good spot to let you through. Or he might not be saying anything at all and just saying, yep, if you want this position, get it. You can see it. It's right here. You're a big boy. You can do it. Although Portis might be looking a little bit beyond himself and the current situation because he knows that Loverink is close behind, at least close enough for it to be uncomfortable. The front straight. There will be a slipstream being given over. You can see Clifford. Shark just creeping up. Portis is really going to be defending this one. Into the first corner, there's contact as Portis gets pushed a little bit sideways. Clifford, not the move he wanted, doesn't go for anything. Doesn't want to potentially cop a penalty. So for the time being, Portis stays ahead. Ooh, Hernandez is coming for an extra stop. Not certain what that's for. But if these two keep fighting, Loverink could be taking over. He's just barely in the background there for a moment. Clifford. Oh, actually, Hernandez is dropped out of the race. Hernandez will lose a lot of points on this. At least in the championship for the Pro-Ams, because Fernandez is still here. Clifford giving it his all, though, here. He wants the position. He knows that Portis is slower, but he has to find the right moment. Tries to get a straighter exit. He does through. Really up alongside the wall there, right under the wing there of the Honda. I'll try to get a much tighter line. And Portis may have to employ the same defensive move he did one lap ago. He's in the slipstream, he sits. Clifford says you can defend in the middle, but I'm just gonna go even tighter. And into that first corner. Is the job done for Clifford? It is. Portis with a bit of a burst of speed there, tries to make a move around the outside. Now he's back on the inside, side by side for these two for second place, and there's more contact as the battle continues. Portis still staying ahead and will cement that spot. He is not making this easy at all for Clifford, but the problem is with how much these two are just coming to blows here, Loverink could catch up quite a lot. You can see those two ahead. Just about to disappear into the corner. Portis has to be thinking about that 52. There's no way he isn't, because he spent so long ahead and then lost his spot. But he's going to be hurting himself more and more. Loverink's gaining every single corner, which for him is great because he could maybe set up the two for one. And once again, a similar gap for Clifford. Oh, but that slipstream actually not giving that much of a boost. Portis goes a little defensive though. Later on the brakes, contact for both of them. Clifford finally having enough. And just nudges the Honda aside, saying, you've wasted enough of my time. Now you get to deal with the Audi who's behind you. Good luck. God help you, because I'm certainly not going to. Wonder if that might be a, sort of a post-race inspection from the stewards. Don't think so. It didn't look too malicious. But, although I don't know what was happening at that moment, but Loverink now in a great position for second place. 13th position. Or sorry, 13 minutes rather remaining here, and Portis might be seeing the error of his ways, as Loverink has rapidly been closing. These two for a second. Lemaire and Carpenter for 9th. This has been a long time coming. This Carpenter has been incredibly fast compared to the Ferrari, and he doesn't even have to do anything because Lemaire just compromised himself immediately, missing his brake point. Now Portis has to do it all again. Will he go defensive? He's just drifting to the right. And Loverink doing the exact same move as Clifford, but this time it's a bit of a different outcome. Portis steps aside, does not want to be involved. Clifford, I think, just went onto the grass there a little bit. Oh, that's Waters, actually. It was Waters getting out of the way for Clifford and Loverink and Portis. So now the 52 can start to at least build the gap to the Honda. I wouldn't even say close into the Lamborghini ahead. And speaking of other cars of other manufacturers, Rasco still has not pitted. And hopefully will be pitting soon, as he only has 6.5 minutes to actually get that stop cleared. He may be doing what Carpenter did, but in the opposite direction, going as late as possible. We'll have to see. And to answer your question, Cloud, this is on PC. That's why it looks a little bit scuffy. That is purely for me. When I first started broadcasting the Sprint Series, I did a little bit of experimenting on just how much quality I can get away with before Streamlabs has a bit of an issue. That's also just what I used to race on, because I like to lower my settings, because I like all my frames. But I do like to balance the performance with the look of the frame. We are back to sort of that calm bit of racing. Your top three separated by just about 4 seconds. A little bit more, a little bit less. You can see Keogh, Hendrickson a long way back. And with a Lamborghini still as a blue flag buffer, Aston Martin very well into a top 5 finish, barring any sort of weird occurrences. The same with the Lamborghini here. Unless Rasco somehow gets this one timed up perfectly and comes out just ahead of Hendrickson. Last lap for Rasco has been in the lower 37s. And for Hendrickson has been in the very low 36s. So this may be a fruitless endeavor. Or maybe Rasco just wants to see where he can end up after a penalty is given for not coming into pit. That is Stapleton just ahead. Blue flags being waved. And just completely dumps Stapleton. I think that Rasco wanted to use the 35 as a draft, and I believe Stapleton may have just come off of it a little too... Yeah, he just came off of it far earlier than Rasco was expecting. So that is not going to be good for this driver. He may just go to the end with it. I don't think Stapleton is really in any sort of position to pit for damages. The front and the back. We'll see. Let's see what it sounds like. Let's see how much the performance is affected. It seems to be by quite a lot. The line-up's a little faster. A lot of short shifting, though, from the 35. So he may have to come in. This is definitely going to be Stapleton coming in. Probably for, hopefully not the rest of the race. It's never what you hope for. Although if he stays out, Scott Waters, I don't believe will be able to round him up. He's a long way back, almost a full minute behind. Rasco still out there. He might just go right up until that timer stops. Clifford's still with the fastest lap, though. Even if Rasco doesn't come in, penalties will put him behind. I'm not certain how far down that'll be. We'll have to see once the game sort of tallies up the results, and obviously drivers will, any complaints they may have, will lodge them after the race. There is a short mandatory amount of time before drivers can actually contact the stewards for them to look at the incident and see if there are any penalties that need to be dished out. And if they are, they'll be applied post-race, and of course we'll report on that via the final standings next week in the recap. And of course, that'll be the last race of the season. Clifford doing a great job right now. He is on for the maximum amount of points, 158. As he is one leading this race, could win it, would get 150 points in the bank. Gaining 5 for starting on pole position and 3 for fastest lap. Although, once you tally everything up, I believe, fairly certain, that he would effectively get, if you only accounted for Loverink's starting position and 0 points as well, it'd only be 154. Because second place gets 4 points for their starting spot. Rasco has finally come into the pits. Very quick splash and dash. So we'll see where he comes out. Portis will grab this. I don't think Keo will. Keo might. I don't. Hendrickson, there's no way. I don't believe it. Well, Rasco is a long way from coming out. So there goes Keo. Oh, it looks like Hendrickson actually has. And at some point right there, Rasco finally leaves the pit lane, the last driver to do so, just with 25 seconds to go. So Rasco from first all the way down to 6th position. Sanchez will have absolutely no say in the matter. And just behind him is Dan Fernandez. Oh, Sanchez. Okay. Having a little bit of a brain lag there into the first corner. Doesn't spin out, doesn't lose time. Fernandez was maybe hoping for something a little bit different. But the only thing he'll really get is sort of a consolidation, couple of tenths gained. Not like that really does anything. So that pit window is closed. Everybody has done their stop, even the two that we have lost, of Pocket and Hernandez. Just under 4.5 minutes to go. Clifford leading from Loverink and Portis, your top 3. Keo and Hendrickson will round out that top 5. Rasco on the outlap following his pit stop is 6th. Then it's Sanchez in 7th. Fernandez in 8th. Carpenter in 9th. Lucas Lemaire rounding out the top 10. Lanham, Stapleton, and Waters has gone off into turn number 1. We'll run it back. We'll see what happened. Or sorry, this is not turn 1. I apologize. He has just completely missed his break point. Has slid off. Trying to get the Lamborghini going in the right direction. He's had quite a disastrous race. He keeps going, and Stapleton off as well. And that damage is really doing a number on him. But it's still 3 minutes and 15 seconds until the checkered flag, and he's still a lap up on Waters. So barring any major implosion of skill, should be fine for a 12th place finish. And this will swing the amateur class championship in their favor. Right now, 10 points behind Migliori, but with this finish, things will be shaken up a little bit. The only amateur class driver out there. Lovering will be losing points to Clifford going into the final race of the season. And then, of course, with Hernandez out of the picture, Fernandez can have a little bit of extra breathing room for the Pro-Ams. And then for the Silvers, Frizza was leading Lanham by 4 points. Frizza is not here. Lanham will be more than happy to have that Silver class championship handed over to him, unless Frizza shows up for the final race. We'll do a little something extra, make sure we have the final standings going in to that race at Bathurst. But Stapleton has had enough, has said, all right, this car is impossible to drive. I just can't do it. And Waters could have the chance of going into 12th. Will unlap, but will be immediately lapped again. But with how long Stapleton has to sit, it might actually play into his favor. Stapleton hasn't crossed the start-finish line because it's just up ahead, just tantalizingly out of reach. And I think this may be Stapleton throwing in the towel. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if Stapleton got back to the pits and then returned to pits or returned to garage. But what I do know is that we are at the final lap. Clifford has done a phenomenal job here at Indianapolis, just eking out pole position over Loverink, and that was all the invitation he needed to build a gap. Loverink struggling to stay close, and Portis has been very steady on his drive. Held up Clifford for a bit. You think if he maybe let the 999 around sooner, could he be battling Loverink and defending? I don't know. Keogh has just about 2/3 of a lap to go, and Hendrickson is bearing down on him, but how soon can he close it up? Can he close it up? He may be just a little bit late for the buzzer. He's going to be giving it absolutely everything. He's got to hope Keogh makes a mistake. But that Aston Martin is not one to falter easily. Check back in, though. Clifford is coming through the last set of corners for the final time. When he gets back around, it will be the checkered flag as Waters has spun out at the final corner. But Clifford wins at Indianapolis. Loverink will come home in P2. He'll be happy about that one. And Portis gets onto the podium for Honda. Stapleton just now getting out of the pit box. And Keogh can breathe easy as he comes home just ahead of Hendrickson for 4th. Hendrickson gets that 5th place position. And it looks like Stapleton might be able to keep 12th over Waters as Rasco finishes in position 6. And Sanchez has a pretty decent gap over Fernandez. These two McLarens will come home 7th and 8th respectively. And then I think we have a little bit of a gap until the next few drivers. Yep, Sanchez and Fernandez, they'll get it done. Carpenter in 9th. He'll be happy with that top 10 finish, and someone who's probably going to be very happy about that is Lucas Lemaire in the 510 Ferrari. 10th position across the bricks. He'll flash the headlights in celebration, and that just leaves Larry Lanham, the number 8, and this will give him the lead for the silver class going into next week's race. And he'll go all over the place. But folks, that is going to do it for us here tonight at Indianapolis. So let's take a look at the final standings, at least for the time being, unless there are any complaints that get lodged for the stewards to deal with. We'll report on that, of course, next week. But it is Clifford, Loverink, Portis, Keogh, Hendrickson, Rasco, Sanchez, Fernandez, Carpenter, and Lemaire, your top 10 in the Pro-Ams. It is Hernandez, who unfortunately dipped out early, and Pocket as well In the amateurs, it is Stapleton. And for the silvers, Sanchez, Lanham, and Waters. But that will do it for us here tonight. Like I said, we are at Bathurst next week, the last race of the season. The championship still yet to be decided. With the win here tonight, though, it might be a little bit easier for Clifford to win. He was only down 134 points. Or sorry, 135 points behind Loverink. But we'll see what the gap is. I gotta do a little bit of math, so give me a little bit of time. And then Stapleton will take the lead for the amateur class. Fernandez will stretch the Pro-Am series out a little bit. And Lanham will give Frizza a bit of offense to play next week. Before we go, of course, one final shout out to Simrigs for sponsoring another season of the Sprint Series. Melbourne, Australia, all of Australia and New Zealand. You guys are covered. Outside of that, send them an email. They'll do some business with you. And, of course, if you're supporting us via Patreon, you guys are getting a 5% discount on your purchases, so take advantage of that. Sim racing isn't cheap. It never has been, never will be, unless we somehow manage to ramp up production of all sim racing equipment. But that'll be something for the future to decide. Bathurst, though, next week, the last race of the season, and pretty much every single class championship has yet to be decided. Had Loverink won tonight, we could have seen the overall and the pros closed out early, but we'll just have to wait. But on behalf of myself and everybody here at the OR, I'd like to thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed your stay, and as always, stay safe, stay beautiful, get ready, because next week, we're off to Bathurst.